Tail Telecom for hosting Otter Tail County's program. My name is Shannon Terry. I am the Public Information Officer for Otter Tail County. My role is to share information, to facilitate discussions, and really to engage the public through communications such as this TV program, our social media like Facebook and Twitter, as well as we will enhance our website and have a new look in September. And we also will have engagement in public outreach and events, and I will report the details in local radio, local media, such as this TV program, as well as local newspapers. So really look for your local media sources to find more information about upcoming events and where Otter Tail County has been and what we're doing. Today, the new show will share information, it will discuss resources, and it will engage residents. That is our goal. For our very first show today, we have John Dinsmore.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing well. A beautiful morning.
It is. John is the County Administrator of Otter Tail County, and today we are going to talk kind of a County Government 101, as well as introducing your role and really what we do as a county.
Well, thank you very much, Shannon, for the invitation and for Otter Tail Telecom for sponsoring this and supporting this. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Could you please describe your role in the county?
I'll give that a stab. Have been in this role, the County Administrator role, for the past year. Have been with Otter Tail County for since 1999, primarily as a Human Services Director and then Community Services Division Director. The County Administrator in county government is one that a number of counties have. Some would say that it's similar to being the Executive Director. I've found in the time that I've been in this role that it's probably more like being, for those that have ever watched West Wing or heard about things on TV, it's more like the Chief of Staff, because you have a lot of other people that are content experts in a number of areas, and the primary role that you play as a county administrator is what I call the 3 C's. It's communication, collaboration, and coordination, and that's a lot of the time and effort. And you're doing this on behalf of the elected officials that citizens of Otter Tail County have elected, and those elected officials are county commissioners. So, as some have said when they talk about various TV shows, this role is that you work at the pleasure of the county commission.
And maybe we can start there and explain how the county government is set up. And as you said, citizens are at the top. That is who
That's right.
we answer to, is the citizens. And the citizens elect 5 county commissioners.
They do. And along with those county commissioners, they also elect other constitutional officers such as the county attorney, the county sheriff, the auditor treasurer in our case, as well as the recorder, the county recorder. And those are positions, all of which are have 4-year terms, and a number of them are going to be up for re-election this upcoming fall. With county government, I think what's interesting is that of all of our units of government, between schools and cities, counties, state and federal government, the county government is probably the one that people think they know something about. When they're asked questions about various things that the county government does, people kind of draw a blank. In fact, there was a survey done a number of years ago by the Association of Minnesota Counties that did just that, and the response was, and this is my abbreviated version, people said, well, we think counties are doing a good job, we just don't know what it is that they do. And I think so much of the reason why is because city government, for example, and school districts probably do get a lot more attention and get a lot more local media coverage because they're serving kids, they're serving needs of the immediate city citizens. And so there's maybe more information and more awareness of what those units of government are doing compared to what it is that we're doing at the county. For those that may or may not know, probably the primary areas of service that we have include transportation, roads and bridges, health and human services, law enforcement, the sheriff's office, and then more recently, probably what's really grown has been in areas of recycling and solid waste management, as well as just land management overall. Those are areas that county government plays a significant role with.
So it is really important to have our communication as well and this TV program
Yes.
to get this information out to say this is what the county does. We have 7 divisions, we have 22 departments, and 565 employees.
It's amazing.
So we're doing a lot of work, and we really want to get that word out and let residents know what the county is doing on their behalf. Could you describe a few of these services?
Yes, let me share some information more generally, first of all, as far as our county government. If I may, let me just comment about how we work from a budget point of view. Because when people hear about county government, they think that this is primarily funded by people that live in the county and are paying property taxes. And that's true to a point. Our county government this year our overall budget is about $105 million. And of that amount, $40 million comes from local levy or county property taxes. The rest of our funds come from basically state and federal government. Many people aren't aware of that. Many people maybe really don't give it a whole lot of thought or maybe don't even care. But the funding that we have for county government is a blend of both property taxes, state dollars, as well as federal dollars. Those, of that amount, let me come back to some of the other programs that I mentioned in the departments. A fair share of that goes to the highway department or our public works area. And even though they have a budget of about $37 million, here's an example of where the blend of state, federal, and county dollars comes in. Of that money that they use for roads and bridges, only 9.2% of it is county dollars. The rest of it comes from primarily the federal and state government. So again, people maybe aren't aware of that, and yet it is so critical because what that department and what that division does is administer and maintain our 1,000+ miles of highways and all of our, I think we have 142 bridges, and that's a significant part of what we do. Another area that comes to mind is what we have for health and human services. And even though overall there's maybe about only, depending on the program, 10% of our population that uses human services programs, we end up spending about $20 million on all of those programs, again, most of which is federal and state dollars. And the primary services that we provide in human services include looking out for the most vulnerable in our society, either through child protection or through vulnerable adults. There are people that also apply for food support, and it's mostly families and children that do that. And of the total number of people that live in our county, which is 58,000, about 3,400 people use food support. The biggest program that most people use when it comes to human services has been in the area of healthcare coverage. I know that's gotten a lot of attention and coverage over these past 5 years when the ACA law was passed and regarding health care, and yet at the same time it was an important policy because we did discover in this state as well as many other states that we had a number of people that were undercovered and didn't have health coverage. So now probably about 25% of our population in the county has some form of health care coverage that receives some level of public funding. So those two programs, health and human services, transportation, and then law enforcement are kind of rounds out the big three, if you will, of the program areas that we spend and focus a lot of our time on.
If residents of Otter Tail County had a question about some of these services, where could we direct them?
Sure. You know, the first thing that we're really trying to emphasize more and more, and especially in this day and age, how often people use internet access. So we want to make sure that people are invited to see our internet site and go there. Now, it's been a site that we've had for a number of years, and we are going through a big revamp right now. So stay tuned. By this fall, we should have an internet site that's going to look, I think, a lot better, and it's going to be a lot more user-friendly than what we've had in recent times. And that internet site, I think, is, I'm going to double check, it's just www.co.ottertail.mn.us. Another way to get a hold of us is just through our, by phone. And the phone number that's probably the most straightforward to call and to remember is 998-8000. And then that can gain access to, and if you happen to know people's extensions, you can connect with them directly. And then finally, we do have email, various email addresses, and if people are working with various departments and various individuals from departments and divisions, they can always reach us by email. But more and more, we realize that in this day and age, the role of technology that plays in how you contact various organizations is so key. And then finally, the old-fashioned way is just to come and visit us. And comment on that, we have one primary building that is where a lot of our offices are located. And for those that are familiar with the Fergus Falls area, we're adjacent to the old Regional Treatment Center. It's on 520 West Fur Avenue, and that's called our Government Services Center building. In addition to that, we have 3 other locations in Fergus Falls, the old courthouse. We also have another building across the bridge from the courthouse on 505, and then our solid waste department is over on Tower Road. Finally, we have a New York Mills building, an office building that houses a number of our services. And then the sheriff's office has an operations center that's located in Otter Tail City.
So we really encourage all of you to contact us, to use our website, or give us a call, stop by.
Yes, anytime.
And John, you had talked about the relationship in funding between the state and county.
Yes.
And recently, commissioners and other employees of Otter Tail County visited St. Paul and talked with our local representatives. And this is through the Association of Minnesota Counties.
That's right.
It was County Day at the Capitol. And when these partnerships are being developed, what kind of outcome results from these meetings for the residents of Otter Tail County?
No, good question. And just a comment or some background. One of the things that we talk a lot about is the role of counties and how they fit in with the grand scheme of things. And here's some, it's going to sound like political science 101, but let me share on this. When in the United States, we are a representative form of government, and we do have a lot of units of government. And actually, when you add them all up, from the federal government to the states, all of our counties, which in Minnesota we have 87 counties, down to the townships, cities, and schools, across the nation, adding them all up, we've got over 70,000 units of government. Now, some people will say, why do we need that many? And it's a good question to ask, and in fact, many people will say, gee, doesn't that make us less efficient because we have so many units of government? There's probably a good argument to support that belief. We maybe are less efficient, but the philosophy behind having all those units of government is to make sure that we have representation at the local level and as close to the citizens as possible. So we happen to be one of the county governments in the United States. There's about 3,100 counties overall. And in our state, along with 11 other states, we have what is called a state-supervised, county-administered system. As some of us argued before, we exist by virtue of the state saying that we can exist. There's statutes in law that establish and develop counties. And how we operate in Minnesota is that at the state level, with the legislators, the senators, and representatives that we elect to be to represent us, along with the governor and other constitutional officers, they really kind of create the statutes and create the policy direction. And then they turn to the counties and say, counties, we want you now to implement this. We want you to administer what we're doing. So that's a big part of what we do. So the relationship that we have with the state of Minnesota is critical and is very integral for both of us. Some have suggested that we couldn't exist without each other. The state needs the counties and the counties need the state. So realizing that that's the nature of the relationship we have with one another, a contingent of our staff as well as our commissioners went down recently to meet with our representatives. And some of the primary areas that we're talking about right now that we really are paying attention to include these. First of all, it's going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but coming back to roads and bridges and highways, that's a big area. We want to continue to have regular, consistent funding for those. And that's a big challenge that's happening nationwide right now as we kind of wrestle with what are our priorities and how do we want to use tax dollars. Because we have an infrastructure, a lot of which was created in the 50s when it created a highway system, and now it needs a lot of attention, and it means we need to invest some dollars. And the question that goes on is, how much do we use tax dollars to do that, and how much do we use private funds and private companies to help us accomplish those goals? A second area has been in mental health. One of the bigger challenges right now has been we've been moving more and more towards a community-based mental health system. We moved away from an institutional-based system years ago. Many people are aware of that, are familiar with that in Minnesota and in Fergus Falls because we had a regional treatment center, a state hospital that was here for so many years. We moved away from that because research and evidence-based practices taught us that having people in a large institution wasn't as effective as having smaller community-based services where people could go back to their home communities and receive services and treatment there. But in the process of making that transition, we've created some gaps and people are falling through those gaps. And we need a lot more services to help people maintain their independence and live independently. Unfortunately, what's happened is for some of those individuals, when their mental health symptoms start exacerbating, they end up getting to drawing the attention of law enforcement, and they end up going into jails. And we have too many people that are in jails that have significant mental health problems, and that isn't where they should be. They need to be back out into the community, closer to home and family. And finally, an area that we really talked about this most recent trip is with solid waste and recycling. We have had an incredible response here in Otter Tail County by people. We're doing a pilot project right now in our two big cities of Perham and Fergus Falls, where we've gone to single sort recycling. And as a result, the response has been phenomenal, but then that's also produced more volume of the recycled products that we're having to manage in our recycling center. So we're looking to our representatives and at the state level to see if they could come up with some bonding funds to help us add to our recycling center, to help us automate it so that we could use technology to help us sort through all of our recycling. So those are some of the areas that were really main issues that we addressed recently.
So you've really highlighted the partnership that we have with the legislatures and how we need them, they need us, and the citizens' best interest is always kept in mind throughout this entire process.
Very much so. And first of all, it's, as you had mentioned at the outset, we all exist because citizens have decided that we agree with this and we're going to elect certain people to represent us. So it is the citizens that, even though you don't feel this sometimes, it is the citizens that steer the boat, if you will, and if they are in disagreement with what we're doing as various units of government, they can let us know by contacting us administratively or contacting their county commissioners or any other elected officials that they've elected. But we do things then in collaboration with one another. When we start doing things separate and independent from one another as units of government, that's usually when we start failing and start becoming less functional. And then eventually we'll hear about it from the citizens, because citizens will say, our needs are not being addressed, we're not being met.
And the county is very in tune to the comments from citizens. We expect engagement. We encourage people to participate in the process. And currently, you are looking at, as a county, we are looking at the long-range strategic goals. And citizens play a very vital role in this planning process. Could you explain that, please?
Okay, I sure will try. One of the areas that, of all the areas of service that we provide on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis, one of the things that we have discovered more and more as a unit of government is that we probably have not exerted enough effort and spent enough time and energy on doing long-range planning. Some exceptions to that have been in a couple of our departments. Again, Highway Department comes to mind. They developed a long-range transportation plan that I think we call the Transportation 2040 that says, here's our priorities for how we're going to be maintaining and managing and administering our highway system and our infrastructure. And in the process of doing that, they had a steering committee made up of citizens throughout the county that helped them develop this long-range plan. We also did that just last year with looking at our trails. Mm-hmm. And at first blush, some would say, well, why do we have to spend time and energy on developing trails? I think a big part of the reason why is because it does relate to land services and land management. We are a recreational area with our 1,000+ counties and a destination spot for so many people that want to come here either to live or just to enjoy all that we have to offer. Developing trails I think is very critical for us from an economic development point of view. Those are two areas where we've done some good jobs in doing long-range planning. But in a number of our other areas of our government services, we probably haven't done that. We tend to kind of respond to the issues of the day because that's where people have priorities, and we're trying to meet immediate needs. But we haven't done enough time in doing long-range planning, looking at what our demographics are, looking at what our population growth is looking like, where are we going to need services in areas across the spectrum of services that we provide. So we are doing now a lot more long-range planning led by our county commissioners, and then in conjunction with the staff that work with the county, but then also developing more steering committees or ad hoc work groups to help us address those long-range plans. And we are going to be reviewing that information with our county commissioners as far as our blueprint is concerned this month, and then we'll start doing more with long-range planning on a much more broad basis. Not only looking at just highway services or land services, but looking at kind of all of our areas of service needs.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we would really encourage, if you have questions, if you need information, again, to contact the county. So thank you, John, for all of your information.
You're welcome, Shannon. Thank you for the invitation.
And we thank you as well, Otter Tail Telecom, for hosting our program. We really appreciate the opportunity to provide information, discuss our resources, and communicate with our residents. The next show is going to focus on what John was mentioning about our long-range strategic goals. We also would like to talk about a focus that we have now on communications, external relations. Even if you look on our website today, or if you visit our Facebook page, you will see that we have a video from a county plow.
Yes, that's right.
And it happened right during the snowstorm. So we're trying to really be dynamic and get information out in a timely manner and have some engagement with our residents. So please contact Otter Tail County. You will see the various ways that you can, and as John had mentioned before, and visit our website as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Shannon. Thank you.